Michael Petrasek runs Kensington Literary Representation and is an agent for some of Canada's top playwrights. His clients include Vern Thiessen, Colleen Murphy, and Linda Griffiths. And it's also Michael's job to ensure that his clients' plays are mounted at theatres around the world. We caught up with Michael at his home in Toronto. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Could you provide a quick history of how you became to be an agent for Canadian playwrights?
I started as an actor, and I had a few years where I was performing and touring with the Children's Theatre Company and so forth, and I ended up getting into a bit of a tax debt. So I had to pay that off by getting a real job. And the job I ended up getting was working at the Playwrights Guild of Canada, which is the national association that represents playwrights, English Canadian playwrights. And through working there over the course of a number of years, I just was more and more involved in promoting Canadian work internationally, was more involved in the contract and contract negotiations, and more involved in the issues surrounding plays and playwrights, Canadian plays and playwrights. And it just seemed a natural fit as a result of working there, that there was a niche that could be filled. And so I decided that I would start the agency and focus it on the playwrights.
How did you develop your roster?
A lot of it came because of my connections at the Guild. I was already very well known to most Canadian playwrights, so when I decided to go out and start my agency, I had some fabulous people that came with me almost right away. They knew me from the Guild and they already trusted me, so it was very easy for me to develop my roster. In fact, I very quickly had to start turning people away.
See, your clients are extremely successful and award-winning, but making a living only from writing plays can be challenging. How do your clients sustain themselves during drier periods?
Doing a lot of other things. The average Canadian playwright, the average professional Canadian playwright is probably making about $2,500 a year from their work, so it's not a lot of money. Most of them apply their skills in other areas. For instance, a lot of them are teachers. A lot of them write in other genres, journalism, fiction, nonfiction, creative nonfiction, those kinds of things, technical writing. A lot of them will work as artistic directors at a theater, or some of them are actually investment counselors. I mean, it really depends, but just about everybody will have supplemental income, because there's just no way to make a living from writing for the theater in Canada. Now, a lot of them also write for film and TV, and that's where you can really make a good living and actually get by.
I see. If you could travel back in time to a point when you were, say, 18 or 19 years old, and knowing what you know now, what professional advice would you give yourself?
The advice that I'd give myself is to be more persistent and more ambitious earlier in my career. I think that when I graduated from theater school, I was a little tentative about striking out and really going for things and selling myself, and I think I shouldn't have been, and it took a long time for me to realize what it takes to get ahead and how much energy you have to expend in order to make things happen.
Well, similarly then, what advice do you have for someone just starting out as a playwright these days?
Watch plays, go to plays, read plays, and be involved in the theaters in whatever capacity, volunteer or whatever. You have to be a member of the community. If you want to be a successful writer, it's more than just sitting at home writing the play and sending it out. That'll never get you anywhere. You have to be there. You have to be volunteering or working in another capacity in the theater, be going to the conferences, meeting these people, be part of the playwrights units. You really have to be part of the community in order to have a successful career. And the other thing you need is persistence. Persistence.
What are some of the factors that contribute to picking up a new client? And is there a set of criteria you work from, or what sort of spurs you on to pick someone up?
The very first thing that I need in terms of picking up a new client would be an appreciation for their work. There's no point in trying to promote somebody's work when you're not a fan of it yourself. Concurrently, I also have to enjoy working with the person. We have to get along as well. So those two are big factors. The other big factor is seeing a market for that work. If there's no market, I mean, the play might be brilliant, but if there's no monetization that I can get from it, then what's the point of having an agent? If it's going to be a one-off performance in a small theater, as important as it might be, You don't need an agent for those kinds of things. So I need to be able to see the market, I need to like the person's work, and I need to like them.
What is the most rewarding experience you've had being a professional agent?
The most rewarding experience I've had was a couple of years after I started the agency. There was a theater in St. Louis, Missouri, and they were trying to produce one of my clients' plays, and there was a big issue because this play was adapted from a book, and the publisher of the book had some rights and was trying to negotiate her own part of the deal. And the theater, because she didn't know what she was doing, this publisher, the theater was getting very frustrated. I stepped in and I was able to actually rescue that production so that from it almost getting canceled, it went forward. The theater was so happy about that they flew me down to see the opening night. This is something that does not happen. It happens to the playwright. The agent does not get flown down. And it was just a magical experience. It was so well done. The production was so well done. The response in the community was incredible. And it was just a wonderful experience to have been brought down for part of that. So that's definitely the most wonderful and memorable thing that's happened.
Well, on the flip side, what was the sort of least rewarding or worst experience you've had being a professional agent?
You know, I have to say that that's something that pretty much is a daily thing, actually. It's very, very difficult to struggle against the ennui in the industry here. And by that I mean, it's very hard to get people to read plays. It's very hard to get people to look at work. It's very hard to get them excited about work. And as an agent, it's even worse because in our industry with the lack of money, you might as well be a telemarketer. So when I call up a theater and say, I've got this play that you'd love, the theater is like, oh yeah, you know. So a lot of rejection and a lot of simply shouting out into the darkness where nobody ever replies. So that's the worst part of the job, is that daily grind of just not getting replied to and just feeling like you're not being valuable.
Where do you see Canadian plays, or even more broadly Canadian theatre, heading in the coming years?
I think Canadian theatre's evolved a lot over the last 40 years or so. I mean, basically there was no Canadian theatre in any significant way until around the 60s. And when that started to happen, Indigenous plays that were written here for Canada, when that started to happen, we went through a period, as is natural for any culture that's coming to learn itself. We navel-gazed. We did a lot of plays that were talking about our own history and these kinds of things. Around about the late 80s or mid 80s, all these things started to change, and we started to really, in a big way, our plays expanded in their themes. They were no longer navel-gazing. Some very interesting writers started to come out of Canada. They started to get international attention, and our plays now, I think, are as good as anything out there going on Broadway or the West End. Where we have not caught up is where the rest of the world doesn't know that yet. And I think that's where we can go, and that's where I would want Canadian plays to go. We have started to see some successes, particularly with a couple of musicals recently, and a couple of straight plays. And that's where I think we're going to go. I think we have a very strong playwriting community in this country, and provided we can continue to provide the support that we are and increase that support, I think we will make a bigger impact on the international stage.
As representative for Canadian playwrights, when you think of Canada, what are some of the descriptors that come to mind from a sort of playwright's point of view?
I used to get asked this a lot when I was traveling for the Guild, the question being, what defines a Canadian play?
Yeah.
Are there any consistent things
Sure.
in Canadian theatre? And I did actually come up with some answers, and part of it is to do, the very first thing is that in almost all Canadian plays there's a sense of space. And it probably comes a bit from the geography of the country, I'm not sure, but there is an openness, a tolerance, and a sense of space in our work. There's also a sense of humor. In almost all Canadian work, no matter how dark, you'll find that there's moments of levity, and it's also an observational humor. We don't take ourselves seriously. So I think that there's an objectivity in Canadian work that I think can be very valuable, particularly when you see our place in the world, where we're above still the most dominant country in the world, although that's changing. it really provided us with a perspective, I think, that makes us look at the world in some unique ways. And those are the things that I think are endemic across the board in terms of Canadian work.
Waterloo Region has been called the Silicon Valley of Canada. How has modern technology made an impact or had an impact on your professional work as well as the work of your clients?
Enormous impact, an enormous impact, and I mean, it's almost incalculable in so many different ways as well. For instance, the arts communities across the board were one of the first to go online because it's the cheapest way of getting your word out, right? So websites and things like that, virtually all of my clients have their own website. Virtually all of my work is pretty much done on the internet. You know, if I'm not emailing somebody, I'm Skyping. I'm sending all of my scripts pretty much as PDFs now, secured PDFs. I can get responses and things way quicker than I used to. It's transformative. It really has been transformative. The expenses are way less than they used to be in terms of sending out physical scripts. To a certain degree, I think that might have also led to, because it's so easy to communicate, that I think maybe sometimes that's where I'm running into this silence, where it's easily ignorable as well. But I think that the ability to communicate around the entire world so rapidly has really changed the marketability of a Canadian playwright and what they can do. I think that it's also had an impact in the way work is created, in terms of some of the themes that are working their way into work and how things are used. There's an interesting example of theater and technology intersecting in a play called Dead Man's Cell Phone, which came out of the US a few years ago, where it was basically you were in a room and there was a dead guy and his cell phone, and the cell phone rings and you're expected to pick it up, right? And there's a theater experience in that, although it's a very small audience. So there's interesting uses of things like that happening. There's projections that are being used in theater, and it's allowing for some very interesting staging of things to happen where before you might only get that effect by going to a movie, right? So there's all of those kinds of things coming in. There's also the sorry, I've lost the next point, but it's about the the ability to market the work, the themes in the work. I'll leave it at that.
Very good. And suffice to say, it's quite a robust impact that it's had.
Yeah.
What individual or individuals have had the biggest influence on your career?
I would have to say my former boss at the Playwrights Guild of Canada, Angela Ribeiro was her name. She was a very strong mentor in terms of how I approach the work, what my goals are, and how you engage in just daily going about business. And it was a very good education to watch her be firm and yet always know where you stand and why you stand there. Be firm in defending it, but be polite and understand other people's concerns as well. So,
Where's Angela now?
she's retired now, but she was recently given the Order of Canada for her work with both the Playwrights Guild of Canada and the League of Canadian Poets and the Canadian Publishing Industries as well, which she was involved in. So,
some of your writers have had their work optioned for film and television. Does a writer of plays, how does a writer of plays make the move or jump into the world of TV and film, or is there a formula, or is it luck, or is there anything
Luck.
they can do to, it's luck?
luck, persistence, and connections. There's an adage: you don't work in film or you get work in film and TV by having worked in film and TV. So it's luck. The film and TV world, they tend to work with people that they know. For many reasons. I mean, around the world people do that kind of thing, but it's very much the case in that world. Now, does that mean that new people don't get in there? No. But it tends to happen because a producer might have gone to see one of your plays and liked it, or you spend years pitching a movie or a television show or something to as many people as you can, or persistently over the course of a year or more to one person. Persistence can pay off. I know of one person who put in 150 phone calls to one person over the course of a year, and finally they got the response, and the two are now working together on a movie. So that pays off. Luck, right place, right time. A lot of that, hitting the zeitgeist with something. For instance, The Kink in My Hair, which started out as a play, got picked up by the Mirvishes and just hit a zeitgeist and then got turned into a television show. My Big Fat Greek Wedding as well, same thing, hit the zeitgeist. Tom Hanks' wife happens to be Greek. She happened to see it in Los Angeles, right? So, boom. These are the ways that it happens. And then connections, just by, you know somebody who knows somebody and they introduce you, basically.
What value is an agent to a playwright, and how would you suggest a new playwright attaining an agent?
First off, know that you need one. And you need an agent when, well, typically one way to say it would be this: when the business of dealing with your work and its uses is interfering with your ability to write that work, that's a good time to begin looking for an agent. An agent is going to want to know that there's a market. So a good time to look for an agent is when you've got something hot going right now. Looking for an agent as well, be smart about where you want to go in terms of an agent. Having said that, writing for theater alone is just not going to pay your bills. You might want to look for an agent that's going to be able to help you make those connections into the film and TV world as well. But the time to be looking for it is certainly when you've got something hot, when you're too busy and you can't write anymore, or when you get that one deal that's a big deal and you're not capable of handling it. An agent, in terms of what they do, first and foremost, we handle the business. So first and foremost, an agent is dealing with contracts, is making sure that you get everything that you should be getting in a contract, making sure that if you get the deal, that I get you a better deal. In terms of if you get the gig, I'll get you a better deal for that gig. An agent does not get you work in theater. You get your own work in theater, and if you're not doing that, then there's no point. It has to be a relationship. Again, because of the nature of the business, an agent, it's a sales call. When the playwright themselves is in touch, the theater can take a sense of discovery. So an agent doesn't get you work. They will do the deals. Other things that an agent can do, we're the middleman. So if you're rehearsing your play at a theater, it's a new play, and the director the director happens to be the artistic director of the theater, and you've started to get into issues about money or something like that have not to do with the creative side, what can happen is the agent and the general manager of the theater can step in, resolve the contractual issues, and allow you to continue your creative relationship without those things interfering. An agent can step in and be the bad guy. An agent can take the blame. And should take the blame. All of these things to remove that problem from your hands. A lot of what an agent does as well is strategy, strategizing and advice. Where do I go with this? Right from, I have an idea to write a play. Okay, well, who can we get to commission you? Where can we go for this? What kind of grants are available? This advice. And then simply sometimes holding hands. Sometimes it's just a matter of, I don't know what I'm doing in this business anymore, and nobody's producing my plays, and it's just sitting there and commiserating and saying it'll get better, so.
Do you have a favorite quote or governing principle that sort of guides you in your day-to-day work?
Not a quote from a play necessarily, but I think a good one is, at least right now anyway, is just simply don't be evil, the Google model. I like that one. Always trying to, in terms of guiding principles, because the money in this business is again so low, I always try and approach things with a sense of humor and a sense of understanding for the other side. There is never anything in this world that's so big that we have to get tense about it, and that we have to start, putting other people down to get what we want. So that's, I think, my guiding principle, is that we're in this collegially as much as possible.
Do you have a favorite play or plays?
That's an absolutely unfair question to ask an agent. However, I would say yes, I have hundreds of them, and they're all written by my clients.
Well, thank you very much. Michael Petrasek is an agent for some of Canada's top playwrights, and we caught up with Michael at his home in Toronto. Thank you so much, Michael.